O. Henry was the American writer. His real name was William Sidney Potter. He was the master of short stories with the surprise twist in the end. So let's enjoy the story, The Gift of Magi. It's a story of young couple in love who sacrifice their precious things in order to give a Christmas gift to their partners. $1.87. That was all. And 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved one and two at a time by bulldozing the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher until one's cheeks burned with the silent imputation of parsimony that such close dealing implied. Three times Della counted it $1.87. And the next day would be the Christmas. There was clearly nothing to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and howl. So Della did it, which instigates the moral reflection that life is made up of sobs, sniffles, and smiles, with sniffles predominating. While the mistress of home is gradually subsiding from the first stage to the second, take a look at the home. One furnished flat at $8 per week. It did not exactly beg a description, but it certainly had the word on the lookout for the Medicancy squad. In the vestibule below was a letter box into which no letter would go, and an electric button from which no mortal figure could coax a ring. Also, appearing thereinto was a card bearing the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. The Dillingham had been flung to the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessors were being paid $30 per week. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20, the letters of Dillingham looked blurred, as though they were thinking seriously of contracting to the modest, unassuming D. But whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim and was greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, already introduced to you as Adela, which is very good. Della finished her cry and attended to her cheeks with the powder rack. She stood the window and looked out dully at a grey cat walking in a grey fence in a grey backyard. Tomorrow would be a Christmas day, and she had only $1.87 with which to buy Jim a present. She had been saving every penny she could for months with this result. $20 a week doesn't go far. Expenses had been greater than she had calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. Many a happy hours she had spent planning for something nice for him, something fine and rare and sterling, something just a little bit near to being worthy for the honor of being owned by the Jim. There was a pier glass between the windows of the room. Perhaps you have seen a pier glass in a $8 flat? A very thin and a very agile person may, by observing his reflection in a rapid sequence of longitudinal strips, obtain a fairly accurate conception of his look. Della, being slender, had mastered the art. Suddenly, she veered from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face has lost its color within 20 seconds. Rapidly, she pulled out her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now, there were two possessions of the James Dillingham Youngs, in which they both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch, had been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della's hair. Had the Queen of Sheba lived in the flat across the air shaft, Della would have let her hair hang out the window some day to dry just to depreciate Her Majesty's jewel and gifts. Had King Solomon been the janitor with all of his treasure piled up in the basement, Jim would have pulled out his watch every time he passed just to see him pluck at his beard from envy. So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining, like a cascade of brown waters. It reached below her knee and made itself almost a garment for her. And then she did it up again nervously and quickly. Once she fluttered for a minute and stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn red carpet. On went her own brown jacket, on went her old brown hat. With a whirl of skirts and with the brilliant sparkle still in her eyes, she fluttered out the door and down the stairs to the street. Where she stopped, the sign read, Ma'am Sovereign, here goods of all kind. One flight up Della ran and collected herself, painting, Madam, large, too white, chilly, hardly looked the sovereign. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Madam. Take your hat off and let have a sight at the looks of it. Down rippled down the brown cascade. $20, said Madam, lifting the mass with the practiced hand. Give it to me, said Della. Oh, and the next 2 hours tripled by on rosy wings. Forget the hash metaphor. She was ransacking the stores for Jim's present. She found it at last. It surely had been made for the Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the stores, and she had turned all around them inside it. It was a platinum fob chain and chased in the design, properly proclaiming its value by substance alone, not by meticulous ornamentation, as all good things do. It was even worthy of the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew that it must be Jim's. It was like him, quietness and value. The description applied to both. $21 they took from it, and she hurried home with the 87 cents. With that chain on his watch, Jim might be properly anxious about the time in any company. Grand as the watch was, he sometimes looked at it on the sleigh on account of the old leather strap that he used in place of a chain. When Della reached home, her intoxication gave her little to prudence and reason. She got out her curling irons and lighted the gas and went to work repairing the ravages made by generosity added to love, which is always a tremendous task, dear friends, a mammoth task. Within 40 minutes, her head was covered with the tiny, close lying curls that made her look wonderfully like a truant schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror long, carefully, and critically. If Jim doesn't kill me, she said to herself, before he takes a second look at me, he will say, I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of the stove, hot and ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table near the door that he always entered. Then she heard his step on the stair away down on the first flight, and she turned white for just a moment. She had a habit of saying a little silent prayers over the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, Please God, make him think like I'm still pretty. The door opened and Jim stepped in and closed it. It looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22 and to be burdened with the family. He needed a overcoat and he was without gloves. Jim stepped inside the door. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not anger, not surprise, not disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments that she had prepared for. He simply stared at her fixedly with that peculiar expression on his face. Della wriggled off the table and went to him. Jim, darling, she cried, don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold it because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It will grow out again. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I have got for you. You have cut off your hairs? Asked Jim. Cut it off and sold it, said Della. Don't you like me just as well, anyhow? I'm without my hairs, aren't I? Jim looked about the room curiously. You say your hair is gone? He said with an air at most of advocacy. You needn't look for it, said Della. It's stole, I tell you, sold and gone too. It's Christmas Eve, boy, be good to me. For it went you. Maybe the hairs of my head were numbered. She went on with the sudden serious sweetness. But nobody could ever count my love for you, shall I? Shall I put the chops on Jim? Out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. He unfolded his Della. For 10 seconds, let us regard with the discreet scrutiny from inconsequential object in the other direction. $8 a week or million a year, what is the difference? A mathematician or a wit would give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. This dark assertion will be illuminated later on. Now, Jim drew a package from his overcoat pocket and threw it upon on the table. Don't make any mistake, Dell, he said, about me. I don't think there is anything in the way of haircut or a shave or a shampoo that could make me like my girl any less. But if you will unwrap that package, you may see that why you had me going a while at first. White fingers and nibble tore at the string and paper, and then a scream of joy, and then, alas, a quick famine changed to hysterical tears and wails, necessitating the immediate employment of all comforting powers of the lot at the flat. For there they lay the combs, the set of combs, side and back, that Dela had worshipped long in a Broadway window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoise shell with the jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in the beautiful vanished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned over them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers. But the tresses that could have adorned the coveted ornaments were gone. Sh- But she hugged them to her bosom, and at her length she was able to look up with the dim eyes and smile and say, "My hair grows fast, Jim." And then Della leaped up like a singed cat and cried, "Oh, oh." Jim had not yet seen his beautiful present. She held it out to him eagerly upon her open palm. The dull precious metal seemed to flash with the reflection of her bright and ardent spirit. "Is it in Dandy's, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You have to look at time 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down on the couch and put his hand under the back of his head and smiled. "Della," said he, "let's put our Christmas present away and keep them a while. They are too nice to use just at a present. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs, and now suppose you put the chops on." The Magi, as you know, were the wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the babe in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas present. Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege of exchange in the case of duplication. And here I have namely related you to the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the great treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all who give gifts, they are the wise. Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are the wisest. Everywhere they are the wisest, they are the Magi. Thank you.